I believe that Terrarians often speedrun the game to Moonlord and never take their time on their worlds. I want to change that. So over the course of a year, I will be playing on this one world, with each stage of progression being blocked until the start of a new month. I'm doing this so I can seriously take my time in each stage of Terraria's progression and see what it has to offer. So for the month of September, I've only been allowed to defeat the Frost and Pumpkin Moons. Otherwise, I could make no other form of progression. This is what happened. The new month begins, and so I obviously start out by doing the most interesting thing I could possibly do, and that's building. I still need to add more of these towers to the arena. This is the single biggest arena project I have undertaken. It's not exactly all that complex, but it still takes a hot second to put all these together. But when the first evening came, I summoned the Pumpkin Moon so we could get right to the newly unlocked events. I got to say, this makes me really happy. In so many runs, I skip over the hard mode events. I don't do the moon events or the Martian invasion hardly ever because you can often get by without using them. Melee is also a build I'll use in many vanilla runs because it's really easy to use and you really don't need to do any events for it, other than the solar eclipse. So doing this challenge is really going to let me enjoy these events and do them over and over like I used to do when I was younger. It's very nostalgic, and I get to interact with a part of the game I pass over far too often. I also use the Spectre Staff a lot of the time. Pretty sure I mentioned this last video, but I always viewed this weapon as a supplementary homing weapon and never a main weapon, but while using it during the Pumpkin Moon, I was shocked at how viable it is. I also learned that the Headless Horseman apparently shoots these homing pumpkin projectiles, or maybe another enemy did that, but when were these added? I swear I've never seen this before, which makes me question why Relogic would buff the Headless Horseman if they are the ones shooting these projectiles. Like, why? These guys didn't need a buff. They were already arguably the most annoying part of the Pumpkin Moon because they're really strong and drop nothing. I finally got a pumpkin at the end of the night, but of course, when it's the first pumpkin of the event, the odds of him dropping something are next to zero, so I got nothing for the first Pumpkin Moon event, and I grew a little worried about how I was going to farm this thing for the rest of the month since I wasn't immediately sure what other weapons I could get at the time. One idea I did have though was the Inferno Fork, so I started making some of the dungeon background walls and went to the dungeon to start placing them. I didn't know a dungeon could spawn without one of the 3 wall variants, but I seem to have gotten one of those, and none of the Inferno Fork wizard guys are spawning, so hopefully these walls will change that. I placed a bunch of them and fought several enemies, but none of the guys were spawning. At this time, chat told me there's this thing called Dangerous Dungeon Wall. I didn't really believe it, but I went to the Shimmer and threw the wall in, and sure enough, I got a dangerous variant of the wall that would allow enemies to actually spawn. Is Dangerous Wall a new feature added in 1.4.4? It's gotta be, right? Because I had to Shimmer for it? Here I thought I had basically learned all the things during this year-long run, but I have been proven wrong once again. There's still more to learn. I returned to the dungeon and died. I went back to the dungeon and started placing walls, only to realize that I put the wrong wall in the Shimmer! So I throw the correct wall into the Shimmer and started placing those ones, but once again the sorcerer guys were not spawning and I gave up after some time. Pretty sure chat said something about there needing to be blocks or something. If you know what's wrong with this, let me know. But since I can't get the Inferno Fork, I guess we'll sleep to the night so we can fight the Frost Moon and acquire the Razor Pine, my second favorite mage weapon. I didn't kill enough enemies to get an Ice Queen, but I did get a Razor Pine on the ground after the next event, so we got what we were looking for. I sundialed away a solar eclipse and then mined chlorophyte for some reason. I really actually can't remember why, but what I did remember was that I needed to extend my trophy room, or maybe this is the relic room since trophies are technically a different thing in Terraria. I don't know. I guess there isn't much to say about this though, other than I did it. This actually might be my favorite build of the world. I think I did a good job capturing a certain regalness with this build that fits the trophy room well. I still need some of those banners from the Old One's army to really tie it together. Can I even get those anymore if I fight it now, or is that only something you can get in the first wave? I swear I only ever get it there. Please tell me, let me know. I also need more of those hanging Bezier things or whatever, but we can fish for those. I started sleeping to the next night so we could summon the Pumpkin Moon again, and I discovered that the bunny NPC has this cute little animation I'd never seen before. When the next Pumpkin Moon rolled around, the Razor Pine shredded the event enemies far faster than anything I had on hand. With that said though, I still only killed one pumpkin and once again got nothing, but I did find a witch's broom on the ground. Going to be honest, I haven't a clue what enemies drop this thing. Not a clue. I just find it on the ground when it drops. I'm also trying to get the princess's weapon, which requires you to slay her, and I did that once, twice, thrice, four, thrice, and 5 times and got nothing. So time to try the pumpkin moon again, and this time I took down one pumpkin and then a second pumpkin, and that one dropped the jack-o'-lantern launcher. Someone, anyone, give me your best defense for this weapon's existence. Is there a purpose to it? Is it even viable at this phase in the game? And how do you even get the ammunition for it? Can you buy more jack-o'-lanterns from the arms dealer if some of the ammo is in your inventory? I think that's how it works. I know that's how it's worked for some other things, but I'm pretty sure that's a relatively new feature, so I'm not sure. Farming the moons is taking way longer than I thought it would, but maybe after fighting it enough times and getting banners, I'll be able to focus more and more on the bosses. I started sleeping to the next night, but had to kill the princess 1 more and 2 more times, but while I was killing her the second time, a Martian probe came by, and I didn't immediately go out to destroy the probe, resulting in it flying away. Well, I was afraid of this happening, but I guess maybe the Martians will be moved to this month rather than happening next month? But since it's night, I can cancel the blood moon and make it a pumpkin one, and the Martians aren't spawning, so maybe we canceled the Martians? Fingers crossed? I killed 3 pumpkins and got the bat scepter, which actually seems more viable than I thought it was. I also got the spider egg and the master mode pet, which sucks. I wanted the weapons, so I'm not really getting any of the drops that I wanted, but I teleported to the underworld since the week is now over and Martians, for all I know, could be at my house, and I guess we'll see if they're still there next week. Before we continue, at the end of this video, make sure to check out my second channel, Throbin Gaming, where we check out all kinds of other games. And recently, I released one on Tears of the Kingdom. Link in the description if that interests you. Guys, the Martians are here and there's nothing I can do about it, so I guess the Martians are being bumped up a month, but I guess this is also how the unlocking of bosses should have worked anyways, since it was supposed to be structured so no boss could naturally spawn who wasn't supposed to, though I think maybe the Martians were able to spawn last month, I forget. All I know is I had forgotten when the Martian probe spawns, so I made the list with where I thought it was and was trying to stick with that, but of course I have now failed. The Martians are another event I hardly ever mess with, so it's nice trying them again, but also this is making me realize I really do not like this event. There are so many stinking lasers. It seems to me every enemy shoots a laser. Actually, I'm pretty sure everyone does. And that makes the whole thing a real pain to deal with. You also have to be sure to deal with the Tesla coil turrets because those things will quickly populate the entire surface and destroy you. I don't remember them being this tough. When the saucer spawns, you would think this would make things easier, since you're just focused on the saucer, but the aliens on the ground will still hit you with their rogue lasers every here and there. But I can't really claim that was the main issue. I was struggling with dodging the saucer's rockets, and, well, I think this is the worst I've done against the aliens in a long time. Maybe that's because I never fought them solo in Master Mode. Needless to say, I didn't destroy a single saucer. Now I thought I'd take a break from the moons for a little bit, and I remembered I had none of the biome keys, which bewilders me. In my medium core run not long ago, I got 3 of the biome keys, and I was trying to finish as soon as possible because medium core was pain. But now, when I'm spending a year on this world, I have spent who knows how many hours in hard mode and still don't have a single key to my name. So I went to the underground hollow desert since I'm pretty sure I can get either the desert or hollow key here. I also thought that chaos elementals would spawn, but they were nowhere to be seen. Why? Do these guys not spawn in the hollow desert? I farmed down here a bit, but got nothing, and yes, I know it's not an optimal farm, but as I said in another One Year One World video a few months ago, I don't make farms. This is the closest you're going to get. I also went to the regular underground hollow to try and get the Rod of Discord, but got nothing once again. Before fighting the Pumpkin Moon, I finally figured out how to make the coral reef blocks for a build that I'll be getting to at the end of this week. But first a Pumpkin Moon where I took down 2 pumpkins and got nothing new. So I guess we'll just get to the build that I've been meaning to start for what feels like half of the year and might actually be that long. I wanted to make an underground temple beneath the ocean, and at last I'm getting to it. I didn't really have any plans going into it though, despite having thought about it for quite a long time. There was an image in my mind, but I had no idea how to actualize it. But typical me decided to just start building rather than actually planning it out, and the first thing that came to mind was the octopus boss arena from Starlight River, so I started making a temple kind of themed around that. It's also turning out a lot smaller than I thought it would be after getting the first skeleton down. I also wanted to add waterfalls, and I've seen builds before where there's this sort of splashing watery cloud effect at the end, but I didn't have a clue how you do that. Like, how? There's no block that does this. But then chat said the party girl sells cloud blocks, and I had to do a double take because I didn't believe it. What the heck is a cloud block? I went to the party girl, and sure enough, they were there. What the heck? How? Why? What's a cloud block? Cloud block. How did I never know about cloud blocks? The third week rolls around, and as I was getting my bearings, I came to the realization that my trophy room wasn't exactly built correctly. I had missed a section of wall, making the whole thing off by 1 block. And this is absolutely unacceptable for one of my favorite builds. So I got to work on extending the trophy room by 1 block, which is always annoying since it feels like a small task but ends up being a big one. I then got to work on adding another tower to my boss arena build, but this tower was where the stairs were, and I hadn't bothered to ensure they were all in the same spot before I had built them, so this tower just so happened to make that all the more apparent. Am I going to fix the steps? No, I don't actually feel like doing that. So I'll just live with the fact that if I'm running along the lowest platform, that I stand a chance of falling to my death. Yep. This is fine. I do actually love, though, how it looks with the palm trees at the bottom. Big fan of that. But now, let's do another Pumpkin Moon. This month, more than any other, has been filled with a lot more of the unlocked boss or event material or whatever than any other month. Typically, I'll fight a boss a few times, but for this month, I'm doing these events over and over and over again, and maybe that's just because there is no guarantee that any of the enemies will drop what I want, and I have to grind through several waves to get to the boss just so I can have a chance for those items to drop. I could see farming these events for a specific item as being rather obnoxious, but for our purposes on this world, we aren't even looking for all that much in particular, so we'll just work on collecting all the things. Speaking of which, the first pumpkin dropped black fairy dust, which is something I totally forgot existed, and I'm a little excited to see if it's any good or not. Now that I think of it, I suppose I am actually looking for the Horseman's Blade since I haven't used it since 1.4.4. So with this next pumpkin, I hoped and prayed, and sure enough, I got the Horseman's Blade. Someone had said that this sword is just as good or better than the Terra Blade, and now that I had it, I would have to put that statement to the test. But first, a few other things. For one, I tested the new wings and found that they were just as good as the spooky wings that you get from the twig or whatever. I'm also pretty sure the Mothron wings are just as good as both of them, which made me a little disappointed. This is why I never get people who rant and rave about which wings are the best and will occasionally comment on how I'm using a pair of wings because they are bad or something. I did find that my leaf wings flew for a little less time than the spooky and dark fairy ones, but not by so much that I'd think much of it or go out of my way to get different ones. The only wings I feel like I'd ever go out of my way to get would have to be the Fishron wings. I didn't get the hype around them for the longest time, but during my medium core run, I discovered just how good they are, so now I understand. But all the others, I mean, there's minor differences. I mean, that's about it. Just little differences here and there. I don't get it. Anyways, I collected more coral since I needed more reef and coral blocks for the underwater temple, and then I chopped down a few trees because it turns out that I'm running low on wood, and that feels weird. I have been planting acorns here and there, but it wasn't until now that I actually had to go looking for more regular wood. I suppose there are actually a lot of trees that I could cut down, but I only wanted to chop down ones that wouldn't ruin the world's aesthetic. So I'm very particular about the trees that I cut down. Of course, one reason I needed more wood was so I could keep building more towers at the arena. I only needed 2 more and it'll at last be done. The night rolled around as I was doing this though, so I summoned the Pumpkin Moon and fought it again, but didn't get anything out of it. Now it's time to actually test the Horseman's Blade. So I started collecting hay to make some target dummies, and some of you are probably already detecting a problem with this, but I made the dummies and placed them down to test the sword and the candy corn rifle, and as I started attacking the dummies, I realized that no homing pumpkins were spawning, which is one of the best parts, if not the best part of the Horseman's Blade, and that also means I can't get a very good read on the weapon's actual damage output. I tried the candy corn rifle and was equally disappointed. Not sure as to what to do, I summoned the Goblin army to test the weapon in a more real scenario. The Horseman Blade was good, and I found that it was definitely stronger than the Terra Blade when used as a true melee weapon, and the homing pumpkins can help keep enemies off your back, but even so, I didn't see myself using this over the Terra Blade. The candy corn rifle also did fine, I guess, but realistically, there aren't a whole lot of situations it'd be good for. So now that I had done that and have everything from the Pumpkin Moon except the Raven Staff, I figured it was time to fight the Frost Moon once again, and I had my eyes set on the Elf Melter. I wasn't sure I'd do very well, but the Spectre Armor Razorpine combo is just so gosh darn powerful, and I was able to take down a Santa Bot and get an Elf Melter. I was so excited that I whipped it out to use against the Ice Queen that spawned later, and I was really disappointed. My Spectre Armor and Razorpine outclassed it in every way, whether it was range or sheer damage output. I figured I'd be really happy with this thing after raving about the flamethrower earlier in the run, but this isn't a good start. Then again, it's a single target, and I'm not sure if you can hit it multiple times, so perhaps this isn't an ideal situation for it. I switched to Mage for the rest of the fight, but lost before I took her down, in part due to a Wyvern. The next morning, I added more to the Ocean Temple, but not a lot since I still don't have a whole lot of the blocks I want to use for the build, and I still don't have a very clear vision for it. Then I remembered I hadn't made a single Ankh shield yet, so I crafted one for the Mage build since I still had an Obsidian shield in use for it. I could probably make another Ankh shield if I wanted, but this is fine. I like sticking to Paladin shield for melee anyways. I then remembered that reforging was a thing and got to work on that as well. With the boost from the reforges, I wanted to try the moons again, but I only had one naughty present left, so I figured I needed to craft more. But I needed more Souls of Fright to craft those, and I needed more Souls of Sight to craft an Avenger's Emblem so I can get the upgraded scope for the Ranger build. So I spent the better part of the night trying to find a single floating eyeball to get a lens, but not a single one spawned. I could have just grabbed a lens from storage, but I couldn't remember where they were earlier, so I went searching for an eye to get them. I did eventually find them and made the summons, but I thought it was noteworthy that no eyes were spawning the entire night. This feels painfully normal, or at least it has been recently, to not run into any eyes in hard mode since you foolishly threw all your lenses away earlier in the game, and now you just have no lenses and no eyes are spawning. Now I had 2 Skeletron Prime summons and 2 Twin summons. I took down Skeletron Prime once, though I came really close to death since I was being a bit careless, but I don't want to die. That'd be embarrassing. So I summoned him again and... I took down the twins twice after that, and that took a whole lot less time. And finally, to wrap up the week, I finished up the second to last tower to the arena. The start of week 4, and I have no idea what to do, and I'm excited about it. Guess the best way to start out is to finish up the final tower for the arena build I've been chipping away at for a little while now, and at last I can say this build is complete. This is easily the biggest arena I've ever made, and I must say, I didn't make it right. The bottom platform isn't close enough to the ground. I really need another layer of platforms. Maybe this build isn't actually complete. At least adding another layer of platform should be pretty simple. I think the problem came from adding stairs near the ocean. For some reason, I think there's maybe a little more elevation. I probably didn't need for them to go up as much as they did, but that's fine, I guess. I didn't think of this solution or even this problem until the end of the week, so maybe we'll get to that next month. What I did do though was go back to the Hollow to kind of extend my little arena to farm for a Route of Discord. It's still not really a proper farm, but I added a lower section and widened it a little bit, which is what I think you do when you're actually trying to make a farm. All I know is that I want to get the Route of Discord because I've gotten maybe 2 or 3 of them in all of my time playing the game, or at least in vanilla. Maybe I got it a time or 2 more many years ago, but this thing just feels like the ultimate rare item to find. From what it sounds like, there's a lot of people who go out of their way to get this thing just about every run, which I'll never understand. A lot of people say it helps them with Moonlord, and I've tried that whole strategy with using it to avoid the moon laser, but I ended up dead more often than when I didn't use it. So other than convenience, I don't have much of a reason to get this thing. I also did bring my 1 gnome down here. Oh, now I'm like super lucky. It's totally going to make a difference. I'm really not a big believer in the luck system in Terraria. I don't, but we got a gnome. It's there. I didn't get the Rod of Discord and night came around, and I've hardly fought the Frost Moon, so let's do that now. I desperately want to get my hands on the Snowman cannon because that was my main weapon against Moonlord when I played the Get Fixed Boy seed, or at least one of the main weapons. I don't think I ever used it before then, but that run really gave me a new love and appreciation for it. I guess I would also be happy with the chain gun, but I'm not sure I'll use it even if I get it. The last time I fought the Frost Moon, I got the Ice Queen and lost, but this time I got an Ice Queen with just about half the night left, so I was feeling pretty good and was able to play a bit more safe, and Bob's your uncle, she drops a Snowman cannon. Well, guess I've gotten everything I actually wanted, but I do want to try and get the Icicle Staff thing again because I haven't used that in years, and I'm curious if it's better than I remember it being. Playing on this world has allowed me to try so many weapons I never would have, and it's been great. One of my most recent favorites is the Boulder Staff, which is surprisingly effective actually. Not the best for all situations, but I used it often enough for it to be viable and would use it way more often if I didn't have the Razor Pine. I killed 2 more Ice Queens, but neither dropped anything, which makes no sense to me since I'm pretty sure the more you kill them, the higher your chances are, or something like that. And I got one from the first Ice Queen, but not any of the others after, but I could be wrong about that. I reforged the Snowman cannon to Unreal because I ain't letting this thing go for a long time. And now it's time to revisit the beach. The houses here are disgusting and need a serious makeover, but I can't think of anything. Because I livestreamed these, chat recommended a shark build, a beach jar, a ship in a bottle, and one person said, jar. And then another person or two said, jar. I thought it was goofy, but then my mind started to actually consider the possibility, and I thought of something I actually liked. Before we get to that real quick, I needed more wood, so I chopped down a bunch of trees in the Crimson, and a Chimera spawned out of the top of one of the trees. How long has that been a thing? I can't remember the last time I chopped down any of these trees, and I have a vague recollection of this happening, but I was quite surprised to see it. I also learned you can shimmer this wood, and presumably any other kind of wood, into normal wood. Man, no matter how much I play this game, I keep learning more. After each month, I think I've seen it all, but boy oh boy am I wrong each time. Back to the beach house, where I start off by clearing a bunch of sand at the base. I wanted to make sure the build was still connected to the ocean, so I leveled the sand a little and added more water. And now comes the hardest part, making the actual jar. I wanted it to be big, but by doing that, I couldn't see the other half to make sure I'm matching the two, but I can see them both from the middle of the build. It turned out fine, I guess, but it is definitely not symmetrical in any way. But you can ignore that problem if you just don't look at it too hard, so let's get to work on the inside of the jar. I added some sand and coral stone blocks because I'm going for a sort of coral reef vibe, which of course means I added coral and shells to the sand as well. The building on top now looks a little weird, so I added some leaf blocks and painted them lime to match the palm aesthetic. I'm not sure it makes sense at the moment, but let's fight another frost moon to get the creative juices flowing. Now, not a whole lot happened during the moon, but someone commented on the last video, suggesting I map my keybinds a little differently. See, I have been trying to multi-class, but that meant I had to hit 2 buttons before actually switching, and that time could be catastrophic. Plus, the function keys are really far away from AWSD, and I was prone to bumping some other key or pressing the wrong one. This comment suggested mapping the class's loadout shortcut to the corresponding hotbar number. So say I press 2 to switch to my main mage weapon. When I press that, it also switches to my mage build at the same time. And this was actually game-changing. Multiclassing is now significantly more viable, and I am ecstatic. If you want to try this yourself, make sure to bind them like this. It might take a little bit of getting used to, but it's significantly easier to do. I did also get the icicle staff and tried it out, but it's not particularly better than the razor pine, which is really disappointing. I think the icicle staff could use a minor buff next update, but I suppose when I tried it out, it had a debuff on damage, so after reforging it, maybe it'll be more viable, but that's something that'll have to wait till next month. The ocean pylon build still needs some more help now, and I have an idea for flowing water. I could use waterfall wall, but I don't like how it looks in most cases, and I wanted actual water. So after a solid 5 minutes trying to remember how to do that, I finally managed to get some falling water, which I think really helps fill in the space. And now the pillars are off center and it's bugging me. This I'll fix. All that's left now is the top right of the bottle, and it looks really empty. So I put down some palm wood and placed a bunch of sand on top of it. Sure, it fills the space, but it's not looking great. But I'm just about out of time for this month, and I'm out of ideas on how to improve this build. So I added a few seahorses in a cage because seahorses, and farmed a little bit more for the Rod of Discord to no avail. This is another month where I'm not sure what to say. I continue to learn more about the game and am shocked that there's still things to learn. It's so much fun discovering these new items as well as learning what I can shimmer. Maybe I should just have a shimmer party and just start chucking stuff in there to see what happens. I also really enjoyed being able to spend real time with the Frost and Pumpkin Moons, as it's been so long since I got to do that. I broke my progression chain a little in fighting the Martians, but the builds and moons kept me so occupied I didn't even think to spawn them again, so in a way, they'll stick to their progression slot. After all, I didn't get anything from the Martian Madness, I did that poorly. But that was September, only 3 months to go, and they'll be quite interesting since there isn't exactly a whole lot that gets unlocked. There's only 4 more bosses, and I can only fight 2 in the upcoming 2 months. So perhaps the real challenge has only begun.